Okay, so we were in siman lametet. We got up to seif gimel. Again, our topic is who is kasher to write and to make tefillin. So we said last time, the basic principle is kol sheino bekshira, ino bektiva. In other words, somebody who's not in the mitzvah of putting on tefillin cannot write tefillin. So that's why women are excluded, non-Jews are excluded. Okay, in seif gimel we have an interesting case. Beit Yosef brings it, כתב רבינו בהלכות ספר תורה, גר שחזר לסורו מחמת יראה כשר לכתוב ספר תורה. הוא בפרק השולח ונראה דו הדין זה כשר לכתוב תפילין ומזוזות. In other words, the Gemara there said that a mumar cannot write ספרי תורה תפילין ומזוזות, but then the Gemara said that if it's a ger who went back to his old ways, to behave like a non-Jew, but he was doing it only מחמת יראה, only because fear, then he's considered to still be a believer. It says here, Amar Abba bar Shmuel, Bagir shechazar lesuro, suro kol sheken davar imin. Right, he's like a kofar. So the Gemara says, no, Amar Abba shechazer lesuro, machmat yira. That he was doing it only out of fear. In other words, that he was afraid that the goyim would kill him. Right, as Rashi here says, but he knows that how to write properly. He's doing it lishma, so therefore it is kasher. Yeah, that's what the Shulchan Aruch rules. גר שחזר לדתו מחמת יראה, kasher לכתוב תפילין. He's kasher to write tefillin. Here, the Magen Avraham, though, claims that not all Rishonim agree with this. Why? Because they say that he should at least put on tefillin b'tzina. Okay, and if he's not putting on tefillin b'tzina, then he's considered like a mumar. Here, this is what the Mishnah here says. יראה שלא ירגו, ואף דבאמת היה לו לפסור נפשו על אמונת השם. Right, if they're asking him to worship avodah zarah or something, then he should have had himself killed. מכל מקום לא יצא כלל ישראל על ידי זה כיוון דיה באונס. Right, even in the case where the halacha is yihareg ve'al yavo, if somebody was over and not nerdag, then we know the halacha is that we treat them still as an anus. It's not so severe. Famous Rambam wrote the Igeret Hashmad on that whole issue. Okay. ועיין במגן אברהם שאלה דאין להקל בזה אפילו אם בצינה הוא שומר את התורה, רק שבהנחת תפילין הוא מתעצל, ועל כל פנים אינו בקשירה. כל שכן אם הוא אומר לכל התורה כולה, אם לא מחמת שפחד שלא ירגו, יראה לקיים התורה אפילו בצינה. So the Magen Avraham says it's really only if he's afraid even to do it b'tzina, but if he's able to do it b'tzina and he's still not doing it, then it's considered as if he's not in the kshira of tefillin. Also, he quotes here. עוד כתב המגן אברהם בשם הדר כמו שדאף בספר תורה ממזר וגר תושב צולים לכתוב כמו שכתב ביור דעה, כאילו הכי בתפילין ומזוזות אין לחוש. וכל האחרונים הסכימו דגר תושב פסול לכתיבת סתם דיינו בקשירה. Okay, this is something really odd, that what he quotes here from the Magen Avraham, he says a ger toshav is somebody who didn't even convert. It's just somebody who's accepted upon himself sheva mitzvot bnei noach, that he's kasher to write tefillin. So he says here, kol achronim iskimu, if he's a full ger, he's chayv mitzvot tefillin, so he can write. But if he's just a ger toshav, so he's only chayv sheva mitzvot bnei noach, he isn't mechuyev mitzvot tefillin. So therefore, certainly, if he writes, it wouldn't be kasher. That would be considered kol sheino b'kshira, ino b'ktiva. And here he discusses this in the Be'er Halacha. So just a really strange discussion. He says, "Kasher l'chlot tefillin, kol ze ayri beger tzedek." A ger can write. ולעניין גר תושב, הסכימו הפרים מגדים, לפסול דהיינו בקשירה. ואפשר תשובה, המציא דבר חדש, דאיירי הדר כמוישה דמכשיל בגר תושב, וקיבל עליו כל המצוות חוץ מאיסור נבלה, ואם כן, הלא ישנו בקשירה. Right, so he wanted to say, it's talking about a ger toshav, so you say, well, he's only chayv b'sheva mitzvah bnei noach, so he's not mitzvah and tefillin. No, it's talking about one that accepted upon himself all the mitzvot, except for maybe the neveda, and he's also accepted upon himself mitzvah tefillin. And so there are a lot of rejections. He says, they know. והלא על כל פנים אינו מוזר על הקשירה. ותדע דעתו אם עבד ואישה ועבד יקבלו על המצוות תפילין, יהיו קשירים לקשירת תפילין. Okay, in other words, he says it cannot be. When the Torah says Kol she'eino b'kshira eino b'ktiva, it means that somebody who was commanded by the Torah in the mitzvah of Kshirat Tefillin, if he accepted upon himself, that doesn't count. Otherwise, for that argument, you could say that an Eved or an Isha, a woman, if they would accept upon themselves the mitzvah of Tefillin, they would also be able to write. We never heard of such a chiddush, so he rejects this. Yeah, the whole thing is quite bizarre, in my opinion. There's even a discussion on this. But, that you also have a bit in Germany, right? Sheva Mitzvah Geri Toshav, right? People who accepted upon themselves Sheva Mitzvah Bnei Noach. Pushkin was telling me that he was asked to do a wedding for Bnei Noach. He had the whole thing with how to do it. All right. Sif Dalet. תפילין שכתבם אפיקורוס יישרפו, ויש אומרים ייגנזו. Okay, what's going on here? So the Gemara says that if Sefer Torah is written by a min or an apikos, then it should be burnt. Okay, why should it be burnt? So Rashi there explains as follows. We saw this back in Hilchot Sefer Torah. Rashi here says, Sefer Torah here, the Yasgir Samin, Ha'aduk bekodavat kochavim kegon komer, yisaref devadai l'shem avodat kochavim ktavo. In other words, so if it's written, Sefer Torah is written not with the kavan of Shem Hashem, but it's written with Shem Avodah Zarah. In other words, it's written by somebody, who's a big believer in Avodah Zarah. So therefore, he didn't write it l'Shem Shamayim, l'Shem Hashem. He wrote it l'Shem Avodah Zarah. Then it has no kedusha. Adarabba, it should be burnt because it was written l'Shem Avodah Zarah. Okay, the Gemara says that regarding Sefer Torah. Regarding Tefillin, it's not so clear. Why? In the Torah, we have two girsot regarding Tefillin. Girsa that we have here, you say Ktavan min if the Tefillin were written by a min yisarfu, but there's another Girsa Sfarim Acherim that had the Girsa Yiganzu, and that's the Girsa that Beit Yosef had. So because of this, the Beit Yosef said, so what does the Tur hold? Does the Tur hold? It must be that the Tur holds that there's a difference between a Sefer Torah and Tefillin. Why? So he explains it as follows. Here, Rabbeinu katav kan detfilim shektavan min yiganzu. Again, that's according to one Girsa on the Tur. Uberchot Sefer Torah katav Sefer Torah shekatav min yisaref. Okay, so what's the difference? Why Sefer Torah should it be burned by Tefillin not? So he says, יש ליתן טעם בדבר. בספר תורה גם המינים כותבים אותו, לצורך עצמם להתלמד בו. הילקח ודאי לשם עבודה זרה כתבו. אבל תפילין ודאי לצורך ישראל כתבן, הילקח איקה למימר דלא לשם עבודה זרה כתב. In other words, he says as follows. To write a Sefer Torah, that's something that even if he's idolatrous or whatever, it could be that, he sees some sort of religious values in what's written in the Sefer Torah. And then he did write it, for that other religion, the Shem Avodah Zarah. But Tefillin is just a Jewish thing. I'm not aware of other religions that would put on Tefillin. So if he's writing Tefillin, apparently he's doing it on behalf of a Jew, and then he's not writing it L'Shem Avodah Zarah, and that's why it wouldn't be kosher to wear it, but it would require Gniza. Okay, so that's the possibility to be mechalik between Sefer Torah and Tefillin. Here in the Shulchan Aruch, he brings both opinions. He says, so here the Mishnah Berurah says, maybe he didn't write it for Avodah Zarah's sake. In other words, they say, no, the Ikar Din is like the first opinion, which says there's no difference between Tefillin and Sefer Torah. If it was written by somebody who was a real believer in idolatry, then it should be burnt. Now here of David, we have the Ber Alach I think you asked about last week. What about if it's a Jew, but he doesn't believe in Torah Sheba'al Peh? Okay. It says here, follows. Because Yehudi sheino ma'amin ledivre rabotenu zal. And here the Be'er Halacha discusses and he says as follows, בעניין דינה, סופר כזה, נראה לי פשוט, צריך לגנוז פרשיותיו. In other words, he doesn't say it should be burnt, because he's not writing, he's still writing the Shem Shamayim. It's not that he believes in another God, but he just doesn't believe in, in Chazav. Okay, but nevertheless, it still requires Gniza. Why? The Shema lo yibed aklaf lishma, Shema lo katav parshiyot v'askarot lishma, Shema lo yadvizir b'din tzaktochot, kivan da'emon l'chazak. So on the one hand, it's written the Shem Shamayim, so you can't burn it. On the other hand, you can't rely on the fact that it's kosher because he doesn't believe in Chazav, so he's not going to write it bimakpid on halacha when he writes it. Okay, וגם חשוד הוא להפשיר על אחרים. מי הוא יתרמי שעמדו אחרים על גביו וראו שנעשה כל כהלכה, וגם שהוא לא כתב אלי איזה האותיות והפרשיות האלו בפניהם ובריאות של ספר תורה. In other words, let's say they oversaw him do it. In other words, it's not that he did the entire thing, he just wrote a few letters, and they oversaw that he did it correctly. אפילו אחי יש לעניין אם איש כזה הוא בכלל בר קשירה. In other words, still the concern is maybe he's not בר קשירה, because he doesn't believe in חז"ל. ולכאורה יש להביא ראיה להתיר, ולא לעניין זביחה גם כן מדרש מישהו בכלל בר זביחה, יכול מזיבחו, ולא ממי שאינו בר זביחה, כדאית בחולין, ואפילו אחי פסק ביורדיה, לצדוק ובייטסים נבדק סכינם, אחרים עומדים על גבם שחיטתם כשרה. עלמא דכיוון דאחזיק במצווה זו, אף אגב דלא כתיבה קרין עבדו, שהם בני זביחה, ומאמינים במצוות זביחה כדפרש שפרי מגדים שם אין שם. וכן הכנה מבענייננו לכאורה. אם אחרים עומדים על גבן ורואים שלא היה בו חיסרון לחג תוחות שמצוי במלואו מלאכת גדיבה, וגם כשנכתב בשמו, אין לו פלוסו דאב הידיים בכלל בקשירה. So he says, just like we find with the tzdokim ubaytasim, that if their shchita is overseen, it's kasher, so to who it should work for this person as well, that if it's overseen. אבל יש לדחות, לא ידוע דין שבי כתר רבחי לסרוח בדבר אחד ובכלל ביקורת, ואנשים כאלו בזמננו יודעים שאינם חשובים כלל המצוות ומציבות אצלם חילול שבת בפרהסיה, גם כן, ואם כן דינם כמו שמסיק השח שם לעניין קראים, אם כן יותר טוב שינחכם ויכתוב אחרים תחתם, אך אם לא יכול למחקה מחמק כסדרן או באותיות השם צריך עיון למעשה. Okay, so he says better to avoid it because he says likely, they're Machal Shabbat Lefarhesia and other things, so there is a chashash that it's not kosher, but he says if you can erase the letters and rewrite them better, but if you can't, then he says sorry for you and whether it would be kosher or not. That's what he says on this. It could be an issue more, not so much by tefillin, I'm just thinking, but by a Sefer Torah, right? Because often we're mechabed people with the last letters, right, to write. The question is, can you be mechabed somebody who's not observant? So maybe that would be a possible nafkamina to this question, whether they can write or not.
Okay, but isn't it either way that you normally have the normal sofa right? You're just holding his arm or something.
Yeah, so that's a good way to avoid it. If the sofa really does the letter, and he's just like a messiah, or you have him fill in a little bit of ink or something like that. But yeah. Okay. Next halacha. נמצאו ביד אפיקורוס ואינו יודע מי כתבם יגנזו. Okay, it's also a case in the Gemara. In this case, I only found it in the possession of the Apikoros, but it wasn't necessarily written by him. So in this case, the suffix requires Gniza, because if it was written by him, then it needs Sreifa, but if it was written by a Jew, then it actually needs to become Gniza, so therefore, the suffix, we put it Gniza. Okay. If you find it in a regular goy, and you don't know he write it, then it's kasher. Okay, this is actually a machloket. The reason to say it's not kasher is because we're choshesh maybe a goy wrote it. The reason to say that it's kasher is that we say not likely that a goy wrote it, most likely was written by a Jew, and somehow came into the possession of a goy, and that's why it's kasher. And that's what here the Mishnah Berurah says. "Stam ovet kohavim ein bekiim lichtov u'vadai Yisrael k'tavo, בפרט במקומותינו שידוע שאין אינו יודעים לכתוב אפילו בספר תורה. נמצא בידן מסי כשף דלכולה על מקשרה דתלינא דאינו יהודי בזזותא." Okay, so this is obviously a nafkamina, could still happen. I don't know, someone said maybe it was one of you, or somebody sent me recently, not so recently, but you saw like a goy auctioning off a sefer Torah or something like that. I don't remember where it was. So based on this, we can assume that it was written by a Jew and somehow came into the hands of a goy, and therefore it's even kosher. Okay, Sif Zayin. says the Shulchan Aruch, אין לוקחים תפילין ומזוזין וספרים מן הכותים יותר מכדי דמיהן, הרבה כדי שלא להרגיל לגנבן ולגזלן. Right, so this is the Takan and Masechet Gitin, that when we redeem them from the Goyim, even though we should redeem them from the Goyim, right, as he says here, אבל במעט יותר בשוויין חייבים לקנות מהם. Right, a little bit more than the value you have to buy from them, so that they won't be disrespected. But a lot more, then no, because we don't want to, encourage them, to steal them, if they see that they can, make a lot of money off of this. And the Gemara says, it brings a case of one of the Amoraim that saw a tefillin in the possession of a goy, and the goy wanted to sell it to him, and he offered him just a very small amount. And then the goy said, "Oh, that's all it's worth," and then he just took it and threw it somewhere. Okay, so the Gemara there says we see from that also not good to offer too little, because that also could cause the goy to be misal. So you have to offer the value. Here the Mishnah Berurah says, he says even if it's talking about psudin, in other words, even if it's sefer Torah, tefillin, and mezuzah or pasul, you still have to buy it from the goy kedei legonzan, unless it's a case of Levan Apikos, because obviously doesn't know kedusha or not. He has here an interesting discussion in the halacha that he says, how much do you pay for something that it's pasul? So he says, in other words, the value that you would be required to pay is as if they were kasher. Again, because the whole issue is to bring it to Gniza, it's not just to put it to you. So up to that, you would have to pay to buy it back from them. So all of that has to do with who write the Sefer Torah. Now we're getting into the very interesting halacha of who you can buy tefillin from and whether tefillin require b'dika. Okay, that's the next issue. Okay, so there are a few gemaras on this. First of all, let's see them. It says in Menachot, very interesting. Tanu Rabbanan, tchelet ein la b'dika ve'ein nikachat ela min hamumche. In other words, tchelet, there's no way to check if it's really tchelet or kala ilam, right? Because the tchelet, the dye, you can make, you have to make it from the chilazon. You make it from a plant source, then it's not kasher. The Gemara then later on says maybe there is a way to check whether it's tchelet or kala ilan. It's getting a bit off the topic because we're doing tefillin, but I remember I once heard from the tchelet people, they were discussing this, how could it be that there is a way to check the difference between the tchelet and the kala ilan? It's not so clear. Anyway, but that's a discussion onto its own. I think my Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Minovich, at some point he was trying to get them to do that b'dika that the Gemara says, to see how it would work. I don't know if it worked out. Then the Gemara says, Tfilin yesh lahem b'dika, ve'ein nikachin ela mumche. Tfilin, it is possible to check for them, but nevertheless, they should not be taken except from a mumche, somebody who's known to be an expert to write. Okay, this seems to be like an internal contradiction. Because if yesh lahem b'dika, why can't I just check it? Okay, take it from a non-mumche and have it checked. Okay, Sfarim u'mezuzot yesh lahem b'dika v'nikachim mikol ha'adam. Right, Sfarim possibly means Sefer Torah, and mezuzot, there is a way to check them, so therefore you can take them from anybody, even if he's not a mumche, and simply have them checked. So the big question is, or not the big question, the one question is, if tefillin have a way to check them, why can I not take them? Why do I need to take them from the mumche? So there's a machloket Rashi Tosfot here. Rashi says, תפילין, יש להם בדיקה, אדם יכול לבודקן אם דקדק בהם חרסות ועותרות עם להב, ואף על פי כן אין ניתחין אלא מומחה יודעים שצריך עיבוד לשמם. In other words, the problem is as follows, that I can check tefillin for mistakes in the writing, but by tefillin, I also require that the ibud, the tanning of the leather, will be done lishma, and that there's no way to check if that was done lishma or not, because that's in kavan. It's not something you could see in the object. Okay, so from this Rashi, it comes out that sfarim mezuzot do not require ibud lishma. Okay, now here Tosfot says that this is also the opinion of the Rambam. That mezuzah, the Rambam didn't say it by Sefer Torah, but he said it by mezuzah, that mezuzah does not require ibud lishma, so that comes out like Rashi here, at least by a mezuzah. By the way, I'm stressing this because this is as far as I remember, I think it's the only place in Shas that Tosfot mentions the Rambam. Okay? It's in Menachot, that's Membet. So, my former Rebbe, Rav Chaim Sabato, used to say that the way to remember this is Rambam is Rashi Tevot ve'em Menachot Membet. Okay, if you just switch around the letters a bit. So that's the way to remember the one place in Shas that Tosfot mentions the Rambam. Okay? The rest Tosfot mentions quite a few times, but the Rambam, as far as I remember, is the only one. Okay? Anyway, it's an interesting tidbit. But anyway, Tosfot here explains differently than Rashi. He says, no, that's not the issue here. He says, Mistama, everybody knows that you need to do the ibud lishma, so you don't need to check for that. So he says, ונראה לפרש, תפילין יש להם בדיקה בחסרות ויתרות, ואפילו האחי אין ניתחין שגנאי לסותרן. ולעיבוד לשמה לא חיישינן שהכל דקים בו. In other words, the problem with tefillin is as follows, that yes, I can check tefillin, but to check tefillin, I need to take them apart. Okay? And that's not good. It's a gnai to the tefillin to have them opened up to be checked. So that's why lechatchila, you should only take from a mumche, and then you will not need to check the tefillin. You can see here, this is why it's getting into the issue of whether tefillin need to be checked. But it seems from here that if I take from a mumche, I don't need to check the tefillin. And that's better so that I won't have to open up the tefillin to check them. Whereas if I would take from a non-mumche, I would need for them to be checked, and then I would have to open them up, and that's the gnai. Tosfot in Eruvin says also something similar. He says, עומרי דהתם לכתחילה כאמר דהי נקחין אל המומחה שלא יצטרך לקרוא כל התפר ולבודקן ואיקה בזיון ותפילין ואיקה נמי למיך שמא יתעצל לטרוח ולבודקן ויסמוך להניחן בלא בדיקה לצורך שעה. In other words, he says either it's a gnai to the tefillin to open them up to check them, or the problem is that maybe we're concerned that a person won't want to go to the trouble of opening up the tefillin and checking them, and that's why we say lechatchila you should take from a mumche. Okay. Nevertheless, the Gemara in Eruvin does speak about what happens in the case of if you take tefillin from a non-mumche. The Gemara here says, "Amar chisda amara, v'lokech tefillin mimi she'ino mumche, bodek shtayim shel yad v'achat shel rosh, or shtayim shel rosh v'achat shel yad." Okay, so here Tosfot says it's talking about a case where b'diavad shekvar lakach or pigon she'ino mumche liknot mimeno. In other words, b'diavad, if I already took from a mumche, then I can have from a non-mumche, then I can have it checked. Or alternatively, if I don't have a mumche to buy from, then I can have the tefillin checked. How many tefillin do I need to check from a person? So if I'm just taking a pair of tefillin, so obviously I'll check them both. Let's say I'm taking several pairs of tefillin from somebody. Then the Gemara says it's enough that I check 3 tefillin. In other words, either 2 shel yad and 1 shel rosh, or 2 shel rosh and 1 shel yad. I need to check them both on shel yad and shel rosh. But once I've checked 3 tefillin, 3 total tefillin, comprise some of yad and some of the rosh, then now he's already muchzek as a mumche. It's in the Shulchan Aruch with me. Okay, so here the Mechaber says, right? We only check from a mumche who's Bucky, exactly how to write it without any mistakes, so that we won't have to open up and check it. Okay. Here the Mishnah says, "Upashut demishu sofer kavua lerabim ubichlal mumche." It's a sofer, that's generally known. That's considered a mumche. מזוזה זה עבירו הדין פרשיות של תפילין ניקחות אפילו שלא מנוחה ודאי שיתקן אחר כך. I can buy a mezuzah or just a clef, the partial of tefillin, without them having been inserted, because that I can check it later. A seif tet is about if I'm buying amounts of tefillin, how many of them I need to check, and seif yud is regarding tefillin that I own. What frequency do I need to check? So you know what, maybe we'll leave that for next time. Questions or comments to have? All right, good choice to everyone.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
This week.